The restaurant smelled like garlic bread and tomato sauce, the way it always did on Thursday evenings. Red checkered tablecloths covered every table, and soft yellow lights made the whole place feel warm and cozy. It was the kind of restaurant where families came to celebrate birthdays, where couples had their first dates, and where friends met after long weeks at work. Lisa moved between the tables with practiced ease, balancing plates on her arms like she'd been doing it her whole life. 28 years old, with her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, she looked like any other waitress trying to make it through another shift. But if you looked closely, you'd notice the tired lines under her eyes, the way she smiled even when her feet were aching, and how she always had a kind word for every customer who walked through the door. "Can I get you folks anything else?" she asked a family of 4 at table 12. The father shook his head with a satisfied smile, his kids still working on their spaghetti. Lisa cleared some empty plates and headed back toward the kitchen, weaving through the scattered tables with the grace of someone who'd made this walk 1,000 times before. The evening crowd was starting to pick up. A group of women celebrating a friend's promotion laughed loudly near the window. 2 elderly men sat in their usual corner booth, arguing about baseball the way they did every Thursday. A young couple on what looked like a second or third date shared a pizza, both of them smiling nervously at each other between bites. Lisa had worked at Antonio's for 3 years now. It wasn't the life she'd imagined for herself back in college, but life has a funny way of changing your plans. Her grandmother needed full-time care, and somebody had to pay the bills. The money from waitressing wasn't much, but it was steady, and the tips got better on weekends. She'd learned to make it work. As she refilled water glasses at table 7, her eyes drifted to the corner of the restaurant where an old piano sat against the wall. It was an upright, probably 50 years old, with chipped black paint and keys that had turned slightly yellow with age. Nobody really noticed it anymore. It had become part of the furniture, just another piece of decoration gathering dust between the fake plant and the framed photos of Italy. But Lisa noticed it. She noticed it every single shift. There was a time when that piano had been used. The owner's father used to play it on Friday nights, filling the restaurant with old Italian songs that made people clap and sing along. But that was years ago, before Lisa even started working here. Now it just sat there, silent and forgotten, like a memory nobody wanted to throw away but nobody knew what to do with. "Excuse me, miss?" A small voice pulled Lisa from her thoughts. She looked down to see a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with curious brown eyes and a yellow dress. "Yes, sweetie?" Lisa knelt down to be at eye level with her. The girl pointed at the piano. "Why doesn't anyone play that?" Her mother, looking slightly embarrassed, gently touched her daughter's shoulder. "Honey, don't bother the waitress." "Oh, it's no bother," Lisa said with a genuine smile. She looked at the piano, then back at the girl. "You know, that's a really good question. I guess everyone just got too busy. Sometimes beautiful things just sit there waiting for someone to remember them." The little girl tilted her head thinking about this. "That's sad." "Yeah," Lisa agreed softly. "It kind of is." As she stood up and moved on to her next table, that simple conversation stuck with her. The girl was right. It was sad. And what made it even sadder was that Lisa knew exactly how to bring that piano back to life. She'd spent 10 years learning how. 10 years of lessons, practice, recitals, and dreams of performing in concert halls. She'd been good too. Really good. Good enough to earn a full scholarship to the state's best music school. Good enough that her teachers said she had a real future ahead of her. Good enough that she used to spend hours every day at the piano, losing herself completely in the music, feeling more alive in those moments than anywhere else. But then her grandmother got sick. Really sick. And there was nobody else. Her parents had passed away when she was young, and her grandmother had raised her, worked 2 jobs to pay for those piano lessons, sacrificed everything to give Lisa a chance at her dreams. How could she leave her now? How could she go off to school when the woman who'd given her everything couldn't even remember what day it was anymore? So she'd turned down the scholarship. She'd found work, found a small apartment close to the nursing facility, and she visited her grandmother every morning before her shifts. And somewhere along the way, she'd stopped playing. It hurt too much to sit at a piano and remember everything she'd given up. Easier to just avoid it altogether. The dinner rush hit around 7 o'clock, and Lisa didn't have time to think about pianos or lost dreams or little girls in yellow dresses. She took orders, delivered food, smiled at jokes, and solved the small problems that always came up during busy shifts. Someone wanted their steak more well done. Someone else needed a high chair. Could she bring more bread? Was there any chance of getting a table by the window? By 8:30, things started to slow down. The owner, Mr. Rodriguez, grabbed his keys and his coat. "Lisa, I need to run to the supply store before they close," he called out. "We're almost out of olive oil, and I need to pick up some other stuff. You good to hold down the fort for 20 minutes? "Of course," Lisa said. "Take your time." The bell above the door jingled as he left, and Lisa surveyed the restaurant. Only about half the tables were full now. The couple by the window was finishing their dessert. The baseball men were on their third cup of coffee. A businessman sat alone at the bar, hunched over his laptop, occasionally sipping his wine without really tasting it. Lisa grabbed a clean rag and started wiping down empty tables, stacking dirty dishes on her tray. As she worked her way toward the back of the restaurant, she found herself once again standing near the piano. She paused, her hand resting on the dusty surface. Nobody was paying attention to her. The kitchen staff was in back, prepping for tomorrow. The bartender was scrolling through his phone. The customers were lost in their own conversations and thoughts. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lisa pulled out the piano bench and sat down. Her heart was pounding. When was the last time she'd done this? 6 months? A year? Her fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the wooden cover, revealing the yellowed keys underneath. She pressed one gently. It was out of tune, but it still worked. She could just play something simple. Just one song. Just for a minute. Nobody would care. Nobody would even notice. Lisa took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. The first notes came out soft and hesitant, like a whisper. Lisa played a simple melody, something her grandmother used to hum while cooking dinner on Sunday afternoons. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would draw attention. Just a gentle tune that felt safe, familiar, like coming home after a long day. Her fingers felt stiff at first, awkward on the keys. But slowly, muscle memory began to wake up. Her hands started to remember what her mind had tried to forget. The melody grew a little stronger, a little more confident. At table 7, the businessman at his laptop paused mid-sentence in the email he was writing. He looked up, trying to figure out where the music was coming from. The couple by the window stopped talking, their forks hovering halfway to their mouths. The bartender glanced up from his phone, his thumb frozen mid-scroll. Lisa didn't notice any of it. Her eyes were closed now, and she was somewhere else entirely. She was back in her grandmother's kitchen, age 7, standing on a stool so she could reach the counter, helping make cookies while that familiar melody filled the air. She was back in her first recital, wearing a blue dress that her grandmother had sewn by hand, feeling nervous and excited all at once. She was back in every moment when music had made her feel complete. The simple melody began to shift. Without planning it, without even thinking about it, Lisa's fingers found their way into something more complex. The tune transformed, grew wings, became something richer and deeper. Her classical training started flowing through her hands like water breaking through a dam. The notes cascaded across the keys, soft but clear, filling every corner of the restaurant with sound. It wasn't loud or showy. It was the kind of music that sneaks up on you, that wraps around your heart before you even realize you're listening. One by one, the conversations in the restaurant began to fade. The elderly men in the corner booth stopped arguing about baseball. One of them sat very still, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. His eyes got misty, and his friend reached across the table, placing a wrinkled hand on his arm without saying a word. The women celebrating near the window fell silent. One of them set down her wine glass carefully, like she was afraid any noise might break the spell. Another closed her eyes, her shoulders dropping as tension she didn't even know she was carrying began to melt away. In the kitchen, the prep cook poked his head through the service window, dish towel still in his hands. He stared at Lisa like he was seeing her for the first time. The line cook appeared next to him, both of them frozen in place, listening. The businessman closed his laptop. For the first time all evening, the worried lines on his forehead smoothed out. He turned on his bar stool to face the piano, and something that might have been a smile touched the corners of his mouth. The little girl in the yellow dress who had asked about the piano earlier stopped coloring in her activity book. She tugged on her mother's sleeve, but her mother was already watching, tears streaming quietly down her face. The mother pulled her daughter close, kissing the top of her head, grateful for something she couldn't quite put into words. Lisa's fingers danced across the keys now, sure and graceful. The awkwardness was gone. This was who she really was, underneath the tired waitress uniform and the practical ponytail. This was the girl who'd spent hours practicing scales until her fingers ached. This was the young woman who'd once believed she could make the whole world stop and listen. And right now, in this small Italian restaurant on an ordinary Thursday evening, she was doing exactly that. The music swelled and softened, rose and fell like breathing. It told a story without words, expressed feelings that had been locked away for too long. Every note carried the weight of dreams deferred, of sacrifices made, of love that asks for nothing in return. But it also carried something else, something lighter and stronger. It carried hope. The piece Lisa was playing now was one she'd learned years ago, something by a composer whose name most people wouldn't recognize. But it didn't matter who wrote it. What mattered was the way it made people feel. The way it reminded the elderly man of his wife's laugh, high and clear, gone now for 3 years but alive again in this moment. The way it gave the stressed businessman permission to just be still for once. The way it made the little girl believe in magic. As the music built toward its crescendo, something remarkable happened. The entire restaurant seemed to breathe together. Even the bartender, who'd heard every kind of music playing from speakers for years, felt something shift in his chest. Even the prep cook, who usually couldn't wait for his shift to end, didn't want this moment to stop. Lisa's hands moved faster now, but with complete control. Her whole body swayed gently with the rhythm. A small smile played at her lips. She'd forgotten how good this felt. How right, how much a part of her this was, like breathing or thinking or being alive. The final notes came softer again, gentler, like the music was saying goodbye. Lisa held the last chord, letting it ring out into the silence, feeling it vibrate through her fingers and up her arms and straight into her heart. Then she lifted her hands from the keys. For a moment, absolutely nothing happened. The silence was so complete you could have heard a pin drop. Lisa opened her eyes, suddenly aware again of where she was, what she'd done. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Had she really just done that? During her shift? When she should have been working? She started to stand up, ready to apologize, ready to explain, ready to rush back to being the invisible waitress who didn't cause scenes or draw attention, or remind people she was anything more than someone who brought them food. But before she could move, the businessman at the bar started clapping. Then the couple by the window joined in. Then the women celebrating together. Then the elderly men in the corner. Then everyone, including the kitchen staff hanging out of the service window, their hands leaving wet marks on the stainless steel as they applauded. The sound of clapping filled the restaurant, loud and genuine and full of emotion. People weren't just being polite. They were grateful. They were moved. They'd been given something unexpected and beautiful in the middle of their ordinary Thursday evening, and they wanted her to know it mattered. Lisa stood there by the piano, her hands clasped in front of her, not knowing what to do. She'd performed in recitals before, back in the day. She'd received applause, but this felt different somehow. This felt real in a way those formal performances never had. These people hadn't come to hear music. They'd come for pasta and wine and conversation. And somehow, without meaning to, she'd given them something more. That was beautiful, the mother with the little girl called out, wiping her eyes. Her daughter was clapping so hard her little hands must have hurt. Play another one, someone else shouted. Please don't stop, the businessman added, his voice rough with emotion. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her throat felt tight. Her eyes stung. For 3 years she'd made herself small, made herself practical, made herself forget who she used to be, and now these strangers were asking her to be that person again. The bell above the door chimed. Mr. Rodriguez walked back in, carrying bags from the supply store. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. Everyone was facing the back corner. Everyone was clapping, and Lisa was standing at that dusty old piano with tears in her eyes. What's going on? He asked, looking confused but not upset. The businessman turned to him with a grin. Your waitress just gave us the best dinner entertainment we've had in years. You've been hiding a treasure here. Mr. Rodriguez looked at Lisa, then at the piano, then back at Lisa. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. Well then, he said, setting down his bags. I guess we better let her play some more. Lisa's heart was pounding. She looked at all these faces, these people who'd been strangers 20 minutes ago but somehow felt like friends now. She looked at the little girl in the yellow dress, bouncing with excitement. She looked at the piano, at the keys that had been silent for so long. And then, taking a breath that felt like the first real breath she'd taken in years, she sat back down. Lisa played for another 20 minutes. And in that time, something extraordinary happened. Word started to spread. The couple by the window called their friends. "You have to come to Antonio's right now." "No, I'm serious. Just trust me." Within 15 minutes, 4 more people walked through the door, looking curious and slightly confused. A man walking his dog past the restaurant stopped when he heard the music drifting through the open window. He tied his dog's leash to a parking meter and came inside, standing near the door just to listen. The tables that had been empty began to fill up again. People who'd been planning to leave stayed for another glass of wine. The bartender had to scramble to keep up with orders, but he was smiling the whole time. Mr. Rodriguez stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, watching his restaurant transform into something he'd never seen before. His father's old piano, the one everyone said he should just get rid of, was bringing his restaurant back to life. And the quiet waitress he'd hired 3 years ago, the one who never caused any trouble and always showed up on time, was the one making it happen. When Lisa finally played her last note and stood up, the applause was even louder than before. Her face was flushed, her ponytail had come loose, and she looked both exhausted and more alive than she'd felt in years. "I should get back to work," she said softly to Mr. Rodriguez, smoothing down her apron. He shook his head, still smiling. "Take your break. You've earned it. Besides, I think you just made me more money in 20 minutes than I usually make in 3 hours." Lisa grabbed her water bottle and stepped outside into the cool evening air. Her hands were shaking slightly, whether from nerves or adrenaline or just the simple fact that she'd used muscles she hadn't used in so long. She sat on the bench outside the restaurant, trying to process what had just happened. The door opened behind her and she expected to see one of the other servers. Instead, an older gentleman stepped out. He had white hair, kind eyes behind silver-rimmed glasses, and wore a cardigan despite the warm evening. She recognized him as someone who'd come in during her second set of songs, taking a seat alone at table 4. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "Of course not," Lisa said, moving over to make room. They sat in silence for a moment, watching cars pass by on the street. Finally, he spoke. "That was remarkable playing," he said. "Not just technically good, though it was certainly that, but the feeling behind it, the emotion, that's what made it special." "Thank you," Lisa said quietly. "I'm a little rusty. I haven't played in a while. May I ask why not?" Lisa looked down at her hands, at the calluses she'd developed from carrying plates instead of the ones she used to have from practicing piano. "Life got in the way, I guess. I had to make some choices." The man nodded slowly, like he understood exactly what she meant. "I'm a retired music teacher," he said. "Taught for 40 years at Jefferson High School, and then gave private lessons for another decade after that. I've heard a lot of talented people play over the years." He paused. "You're not just talented, you're exceptional." Lisa felt her throat tighten. "I used to think maybe I could be. I had a scholarship once, full ride to the music conservatory upstate, but my grandmother got sick, and she needed someone to take care of her. She raised me after my parents died, paid for all my lessons even when she could barely afford it. I couldn't just leave her." "Of course not," the man said gently. "That took real character. But can I ask you something? What would your grandmother want for you now?" Lisa thought about her grandmother's face that morning when she'd visited before her shift. Even through the fog of her illness, there were still moments of clarity. Yesterday, she'd held Lisa's hand and asked, "Are you still playing music, sweetheart?" And Lisa had lied, said yes because she couldn't bear to disappoint her. "She'd want me to play," Lisa admitted. "She always said music was my gift, that I was supposed to share it with the world." The man reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out a business card. It was simple, cream-colored with black text. "My name is Robert Chen. I retired from teaching, but I started a program at the community center. We offer free music classes and practice space for working adults who want to continue their education. Evening classes, flexible schedule. We also host performances once a month, give people a chance to play in front of an audience." Lisa took the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters. "I don't know if I have time. I work doubles most days and I visit my grandmother every morning. The classes are twice a week, 7 to 9 in the evening, Robert said. And you don't have to commit to anything. Just come by once. See if it feels right. He stood up slowly, his knees creaking a little. Also, we have a community concert coming up in 3 months. Nothing fancy, just local musicians performing for friends and family. But if you're interested, I'd love to have you participate. I haven't performed in years, Lisa said. I wouldn't even know what to play. Robert smiled. You just performed tonight. Seems to me you remember exactly what to do. He gestured back toward the restaurant where people were still lingering, talking excitedly about the unexpected concert they'd witnessed. Those people in there will remember this evening for a long time. You gave them something special. That's what real music does. It connects us. It reminds us we're all human, all feeling the same things even when we forget that most of the time. Lisa looked at the card again, then slipped it into her apron pocket. Thank you for the invitation. And for saying those things. I needed to hear them. You're welcome. Robert started to walk away, then turned back. One more thing. Whatever choices you made, whatever path you took to get here, it's not too late. It's never too late to come back to the things that make you who you are. He walked off down the street and Lisa sat there for a few more minutes, her mind racing. Could she really do it? Could she find a way to bring music back into her life without abandoning her responsibilities? The idea felt both terrifying and thrilling at the same time. When she went back inside, the restaurant was still buzzing with energy. The little girl in the yellow dress ran up to her, holding out a piece of paper. I drew you a picture, she said proudly. Lisa knelt down to look. It was a crayon drawing of a stick figure at a piano, with music notes floating all around like butterflies. At the top, in a child's careful handwriting, it said, "The Piano Lady." This is beautiful, Lisa said, feeling her eyes get watery again. Can I keep it? The girl nodded enthusiastically. My mommy says you made the music happy again. She says sometimes things just need someone to remember they're special. Out of the mouths of children, Lisa thought. She hugged the little girl, thanking her for the drawing, then tucked it carefully into her apron pocket next to Robert's business card. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People kept stopping her to say thank you, to tell her how much the music meant to them. The elderly man from the corner booth shook her hand with tears in his eyes and told her she played just like his late wife used to play. The stressed businessman left her a $50 tip on a $30 meal, writing for the concert on the receipt. By the time closing came around, Lisa was exhausted but couldn't stop smiling. Mr. Rodriguez pulled her aside as she was finishing up her closing duties. So, he said, leaning against the counter, I've been thinking, what if we made this a regular thing? Thursday nights, piano music with dinner. I'd pay you extra, of course, and we could probably draw a bigger crowd, make it a special event. Lisa's first instinct was to say no, to retreat back into the safety of being invisible, of not taking chances, of protecting herself from disappointment. But then she thought about the faces of everyone who'd listened tonight. She thought about the little girl's drawing. She thought about Robert's words. She thought about her grandmother's voice asking if she was still playing music. Okay, she heard herself say. Let's try it. Mr. Rodriguez grinned and shook her hand. Thursday nights at Antonio's just got a lot more interesting. As Lisa walked to her car that night, she pulled out her phone. She found the nursing facility's number and called, even though it was late. The night nurse answered. Hi, this is Lisa Chen. I'm calling about my grandmother. I know it's late, but could you tell her something for me? Tell her I played piano tonight. Tell her I finally played again. The nurse's voice was warm. I'll make sure she gets the message first thing in the morning. She'll be so happy to hear that. Lisa sat in her car for a moment before starting the engine, Robert's card in one hand and the little girl's drawing in the other. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could have both. The life she needed to live and the life she was meant to live. She didn't have to choose one or the other. She could find a way to do both. And it all started with a simple tune on a dusty piano that just needed someone to remember it was there. The next morning, Lisa arrived at Greenwood Care Facility at 8 o'clock, just like she did every morning. She signed in at the front desk, waved to the familiar nurses, and walked down the hallway to room 217. The smell of breakfast still lingered in the air, mixed with the faint scent of cleaning supplies and flowers from the vase by the window. Her grandmother was sitting up in bed, looking out at the courtyard where birds were gathering around the feeder. At 76, Margaret Chen still had the same gentle smile Lisa remembered from childhood, even if everything else had become foggy and uncertain. "Good morning, Grandma," Lisa said softly, pulling a chair close to the bed. Her grandmother turned, and for a moment there was that familiar spark of recognition. "Lisa, my girl." Her voice was thin but warm. "The nurse told me something this morning. She said you played piano last night." Lisa felt her chest tighten with emotion. She reached for her grandmother's hand, those fingers that had once been so strong, that had worked so hard to give her every opportunity. "I did, Grandma. I played at the restaurant. I don't know what came over me. I just sat down and played." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I've been praying for that. Every night I've been praying you'd find your way back to music." She squeezed Lisa's hand with surprising strength. "You know why I worked so hard to give you those lessons? Because when you played, your whole face lit up. You became yourself. The truest version of yourself. I know, Grandma, and I had to stop because of me," Margaret interrupted, shaking her head. "And I've felt guilty about that every single day. You gave up your scholarship. You gave up your dream. You raised me," Lisa said firmly. "After Mom and Dad died, you could have sent me to foster care. You could have said it was too much. But you didn't. You worked 2 jobs, paid for my lessons, came to every recital even when you were exhausted. This is just me paying that back." Margaret's expression became stern in that way only grandmothers can manage. "Love isn't a debt, sweetheart. You don't owe me anything. And you certainly don't owe me your dreams." She paused, catching her breath. These conversations tired her out faster than they used to. "I have something to tell you. Something I've been keeping from you." Lisa felt a flutter of worry. "What is it? Are you okay? Did the doctor say something?" No, nothing like that." Margaret pointed to the small dresser by her bed. "Bottom drawer. The envelope with your name on it." Lisa opened the drawer, moving aside some folded sweaters until she found a manila envelope. Her name was written on it in her grandmother's shaky handwriting. She opened it carefully and found a bank statement inside. Her eyes went wide. "Grandma, this is almost $8,000. Where did this come from?" "I've been saving," Margaret said simply. "A little bit each month from my pension. $20 here, $50 there. Whatever I could spare. It's for you. For music school or lessons or whatever you need to get back to piano." "Grandma, no. You need this money. Medical bills, this place, everything costs so much. This place is paid for by my insurance and Medicare. My needs are covered. But you, my darling girl, you've been living half a life, working yourself to exhaustion, visiting me every day when you should be out there becoming the musician you were meant to be." Margaret's voice cracked. "I'm 86 years old. I don't know how much time I have left. But I do know this. When I close my eyes for the last time, I want to know that you're living fully, that you're playing music, that you're happy." Lisa couldn't stop the tears anymore. She laid her head on her grandmother's lap, just like she used to do as a child when the world felt too big and scary. Margaret stroked her hair, humming that same melody Lisa had played at the restaurant the night before. They sat like that for a long time, grandmother and granddaughter, wrapped in love and music and memories. When Lisa finally left the care facility 2 hours later, she had the envelope tucked safely in her purse and a new determination in her heart. She drove straight to the community center, the address from Robert's card programmed into her phone. The building was older but well-maintained, with colorful murals painted on the outside walls. Inside, she could hear various sounds. A violin somewhere upstairs, a voice doing scales, the thump of drums from a room down the hall. She found Robert in a small office, surrounded by sheet music and photographs of past student concerts covering every wall. "Lisa," he said, standing up with a warm smile. "I didn't expect to see you so soon." "I wanted to see the program," she said, "and to ask about that concert you mentioned." Robert's smile grew wider. "Come on, let me show you around." The practice rooms were simple but functional, each with an instrument and soundproofing. The main performance space was a converted gymnasium with a small stage at one end and folding chairs for an audience. Nothing fancy, but it had good acoustics and lots of natural light. "We have about 40 adult students right now," Robert explained as they walked. "Teachers, nurses, construction workers, parents, people who always wanted to learn music or who had to stop for various reasons and are finding their way back. Some are beginners. Others, like you, are trained musicians who just need a place to practice and people to play with. He showed her the schedule. Classes on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, open practice time on weekends, the monthly concerts on the first Saturday of each month. The next concert is in 3 months, Robert said. October 15th. We usually get about 200 people. Friends, family, community members. It's casual, supportive. Nobody's judging or critiquing. We're just sharing music. Lisa thought about it. 3 months. That would give her time to prepare, to practice, to remember how to perform for an audience instead of just for restaurant customers. What would I play? She asked. Whatever speaks to you, Robert said. Whatever you want to share. 10 to 15 minutes, that's all. Lisa pulled out the envelope her grandmother had given her. My grandmother has been saving money for me, for music. I didn't know about it until today. Her voice got thick with emotion. She said she wants to know I'm living fully before she goes. Robert's expression softened with understanding. Then you'd better get started. Life's too short to keep our gifts hidden away. Over the next few weeks, Lisa's life found a new rhythm. She still worked at the restaurant, still visited her grandmother every morning. But now, Tuesday and Thursday evenings belonged to music. She enrolled in Robert's intermediate piano class and secured weekend practice time at the community center. The first class was intimidating. Walking into a room full of strangers, admitting she hadn't played seriously in years, sitting at a piano while others watched. But everyone else was just as nervous, just as rusty, just as hungry to reconnect with something they'd lost. There was Patricia, an emergency room nurse in her 40s who'd played violin as a child and was learning again. There was David, a construction worker with hands like tree trunks who played guitar with surprising gentleness. There was Michelle, a high school teacher learning piano for the first time at age 50. They shared their stories during breaks, why they'd stopped, why they were starting again, what music meant to them. Lisa realized she wasn't alone in having sacrificed her passion for practical life. Almost everyone there had made similar choices, and now they were all choosing themselves again, choosing joy, choosing to believe it wasn't too late. At the restaurant, Thursday nights became something special. Mr. Rodriguez had printed up new menus that said, "Live piano music every Thursday" at the top. He'd invested in having the piano professionally tuned. The word spread through social media and local community groups. By the third Thursday, the restaurant was completely booked. People made reservations weeks in advance. Lisa found herself playing to packed houses, her confidence growing each week. She started taking requests, improvising, even sharing little stories about the pieces she played. The tips improved dramatically. But more than that, the feedback touched her heart. People thanked her for making their anniversary special, for helping their stressed teenager relax, for bringing back memories of loved ones who'd passed. Music she was remembering wasn't just about technical skill. It was about connection, about reminding people they weren't alone in whatever they were feeling. Her grandmother's health was declining, but on good days, Lisa would bring her tablet to the care facility and show her videos that customers had posted online. Margaret would watch with tears of pride streaming down her face. "That's my granddaughter," she'd tell the nurses. "That's my girl playing." At the community center, Lisa practiced for hours on weekends. Robert sometimes sat in, offering gentle guidance, helping her choose pieces for the concert. They settled on a program that mixed classical pieces with more contemporary arrangements, including that melody her grandmother used to hum. "You're ready," Robert told her one Saturday afternoon. "You've always been ready. You just needed to remember." As October approached, Lisa felt a mix of excitement and terror. The last time she'd performed in a formal concert, she'd been 18 years old, still believing the whole world was open to her. Now she was 28, with calluses on her hands from carrying plates, with responsibilities and worries and a life far more complicated than she'd ever imagined. But she also had something she didn't have at 18. She had perspective. She had depth. She had lived enough to understand what the music really meant. The week before the concert, Margaret had a particularly clear day. Lisa sat by her bed, holding her hand. "I'm scared, Grandma," she admitted. "What if I mess up? What if I'm not as good as I used to be? Margaret smiled. Then you'll be human, and that's all any of us can be. But I'll tell you what I know. You're going to walk onto that stage, and you're going to play from your heart. And that's going to be more than enough. Will you be there? Lisa asked, even though she knew the answer. Her grandmother was too weak to leave the facility now. I'll be there in spirit, Margaret said. Every note you play, I'll hear it. Right here. She placed her hand over her heart. That's where music really lives anyway. Not in concert halls or fancy venues, but in here. In the connections we make, the love we share, the courage it takes to be ourselves. Lisa squeezed her grandmother's hand, drawing strength from the woman who'd given her everything. The concert was 3 days away. The morning of October 15th arrived with clear blue skies and cool autumn air. Lisa woke up early, her stomach doing nervous flips. The concert was at 7 that evening. She had the whole day to either prepare or panic, and she wasn't sure which one was winning. She went to visit her grandmother first, like always. When she walked into room 217, she found Margaret already awake, looking more alert than she had in weeks. Today's the day, her grandmother said, reaching for Lisa's hand. My concert, girl. I'm terrified, Lisa admitted, sitting on the edge of the bed. What if I freeze up? What if my hands shake so badly I can't play? Margaret pulled Lisa close. Then you take a breath, and you remember why you're playing. Not for perfection, not to prove anything, but because music is part of who you are and sharing it makes the world a little bit better. She reached under her pillow and pulled out something small wrapped in tissue paper. I want you to wear this tonight. Lisa unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple and elegant, slightly tarnished with age. This was your mother's, Margaret said softly. She wore it at her own piano recitals when she was young. I've been saving it for the right moment. I think that moment is now. Lisa's hands trembled as she fastened the bracelet around her wrist. She'd been so young when her parents died that most of her memories were fragments, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite complete. But she remembered this bracelet catching the light as her mother's hands moved across piano keys. Thank you, Grandma, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. For everything. For raising me. For the lessons. For never letting me give up on myself, even when I wanted to. You did that all on your own, sweetheart. I just reminded you of what was already there. Margaret touched the bracelet. Your mother would be so proud of you, and so would your father. They're watching tonight, along with me. Lisa spent the afternoon at the community center, running through her pieces one last time. Her fingers knew what to do. She'd practiced until the music became second nature again, but her mind kept racing with doubts and what-ifs. Robert found her in the practice room around 4 o'clock. How are you holding up? He asked. Honestly, I feel like I might throw up. He laughed, not unkindly. Good. That means you care. The day you stop being nervous is the day it stops mattering. He sat down on the bench beside her. Can I tell you something? In all my years of teaching, I've learned that the most powerful performances don't come from the musicians who play perfectly. They come from the ones who play honestly, who let themselves be vulnerable, who connect with something bigger than themselves. What if I'm not good enough? Good enough for what? For who? Robert asked gently. You're not auditioning for anything. You're not competing. You're sharing a gift. And that gift is already enough exactly as it is. By 6 o'clock, people started arriving. Lisa peeked out from backstage and felt her heart skip. The converted gymnasium was filling up fast. She recognized faces from the restaurant. Mr. Rodriguez was there with his wife, both of them waving when they spotted her. The little girl in the yellow dress sat in the front row with her mother, clutching a bouquet of flowers. Patricia and David from her music class were there. The elderly man from the corner booth at the restaurant, the businessman who'd closed his laptop that first Thursday night, and in the back, standing near the door, she saw the night nurse from her grandmother's facility, holding up her phone. She'd promised to live stream the concert so Margaret could watch from her room. 7 o'clock came too quickly. Robert stepped onto the stage to introduce the evening. Welcome to our community music showcase. Tonight you'll hear from people just like you. People who work hard, who have responsibilities and challenges, but who've chosen to make space for beauty and creativity in their lives. Our performers tonight are teachers and nurses, parents and grandparents, people finding their way back to music after years away. Each of them has a story. Each of them has chosen courage over comfort. Please welcome them with your hearts wide open. Lisa was performing fourth in the lineup, which meant she had to sit through 3 other performances while her nerves built up. But watching the others helped somehow. A man in his 60s played saxophone, his hands shaking at first but growing steadier with each note. A woman in her 30s sang a song she'd written herself about starting over after divorce. A teenage boy played drums, his mother in the audience crying with pride. They were all scared. They were all brave. They were all beautiful. Then Robert was announcing her name. Our next performer is Lisa Chen. Many of you may know her from Antonio's restaurant, where she's been reminding us all that magic can happen in the most ordinary places. Tonight she returns to the concert stage after a 10-year absence. Please welcome Lisa. The applause felt warm and encouraging as Lisa walked to the piano. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and looked out at the audience. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She found the nurse in the back, still holding up her phone. Through that small screen, her grandmother was watching. Lisa touched the silver bracelet on her wrist, feeling the connection to her mother, her grandmother, her whole history. Then she placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The first piece was classical, something by Chopin that she'd learned when she was 16. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence she didn't quite feel at first. But as the music unfolded, something shifted. The nervousness began to transform into something else. Focus. Presence. Joy. She moved into the second piece, a more contemporary arrangement that built from soft and contemplative to powerful and soaring. As she played, she forgot about the audience. She forgot about her doubts. She was just there in the music, in that space where everything else fell away and only truth remained. For the final piece, she played the melody her grandmother used to hum, but this time she'd arranged it herself, woven it together with other themes, turned it into something that told a story. The story of a little girl who lost her parents but found love anyway. The story of a young woman who had to choose between dreams and duty and found the courage to eventually claim both. The story of a grandmother who sacrificed everything so her granddaughter could fly, even if it took years for those wings to remember how. As she played the final notes, she looked up and saw that half the audience was crying, not sad tears. The kind of tears that come when something touches the deepest part of who you are. The applause was thunderous. People stood up clapping and cheering. The little girl ran forward with her bouquet, and Lisa had to crouch down to receive it, hugging the child who'd asked that simple question that started everything. After the concert, people surrounded her. Everyone wanted to thank her, to tell her what the music meant to them, to share their own stories of dreams deferred and hopes rekindled. Mr. Rodriguez pulled her aside. I've been thinking, what if we expand piano nights to Fridays too? And what if we make you part-time manager? Better pay, better hours, more time for your music. Lisa felt overwhelmed by the generosity, by the possibilities opening up around her. Late that night, after the concert, after the celebration, after saying goodbye to everyone, Lisa drove back to Greenwood Care Facility. The night nurse let her in even though visiting hours were over. Her grandmother was still awake, propped up on pillows, her face glowing with pride. I watched every second, Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. You were magnificent. Not just your playing, but your spirit. You shined, sweetheart. You finally let yourself shine. Lisa crawled onto the bed beside her grandmother, careful not to disturb the IV line, and laid her head on Margaret's shoulder just like she used to do as a child. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Lisa said. Every note I played tonight was because of you. No, Margaret said firmly. Every note was because of you. I just made sure you had the tools. You did the work. You made the choice to come back. You found the courage. She stroked Lisa's hair. I can rest easy now, knowing you're going to be okay, knowing you're living the life you were meant to live. They talked for another hour, about the concert, about the future, About all the Thursday nights at the restaurant and the music classes and the possibilities that seemed endless now. Margaret grew tired eventually, her words coming slower. "I love you, Grandma," Lisa said, kissing her forehead. "Thank you for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." "I love you too, my darling girl. My pianist, my pride." Margaret smiled. "Keep playing. Promise me you'll keep playing." "I promise," Lisa said. "Always." 3 months later, on a cold January evening, Lisa stood at another piano in another venue. This time it was a memorial service. Her grandmother had passed peacefully in her sleep, exactly 3 months after the concert, as if she'd been holding on just long enough to see Lisa find her way back. The church was packed with people whose lives Margaret had touched, and when it was time, Lisa walked to the piano and played that melody one more time, the one her grandmother used to hum, the one that had started everything. As she played, she thought about how one simple tune on a dusty restaurant piano had transformed not just an evening, but an entire life. How sometimes the things we think we've lost are just waiting for us to remember them. How love asks us to be brave, to be ourselves, to shine even when we're scared. The final note rang out into the silence, and Lisa knew her grandmother heard it. Wherever she was now, whatever came next, she heard it, and she was proud. Lisa stood up from the piano, touched her mother's silver bracelet on her wrist, and walked back to her seat. She had a concert the following week, classes to teach, music to share, a life to live fully just like she'd promised. The simple tune had changed everything, and the music would go on.